I had a few people ask me if I would make a quick Healbot tutorial on how I set up my Healbot and just basic general setup of Healbot for those of you wanting to try it. So I'll just go through my basic setup and y'all can look at what I have and decide whether or not you want to keep my settings or if you want to tweak it a bit and try different things. This is what I have in the, let's see, we'll start in the general tab, I'm sorry. So in the general tab we'll start, I have the hide options button. I don't want that options thing to be showing in the bottom there, it's unnecessary. So I just have that checked to hide that. I'm pretty sure most of the rest of this stuff is standard. I haven't played with this in quite a while, so you can just check this with yours and verify that it's the same. I'm going to skip spells for now. I'm going to go to skins. Under general, this is what I have for my general. And like I said, most of this stuff is probably standard, so you can look at it and just make sure that all this is right. For healing, I have self, group, raid, main tanks, focus, my targets. Self will always make sure that I'm in the top right of my Healbot, or the top if I just have one column. By selecting main tanks, the main tanks who are marked as main tank in the raid tab, or by role check, will be put right underneath my name. So I can clearly see my priorities. It's pretty clear. I'm not losing, myself amidst all the bars. I can, make sure first and foremost I keep the tanks and myself alive. And of course the rest of the raid. By doing focus, this is something that I use like in ICC. I would set focus to say the warlock pet who is tanking for princes and make sure I kept the pet alive. So it would put them on my Healbot versus putting all of the pets on my Healbot. I think that the rest of this is pretty standard. Alert level I have at 90%. I have this so that that their bars don't light up significantly until they're at about 90% health. Otherwise, everybody's bar would be lit up all the time and it would get really confusing. It would just be a bunch of lit up bars lighting up. So I like the alert level how it is here. For raid, you can basically say I only want to see the first 5 groups. So if you're in a 25-man raid but you have, 5-10 people on standby, this way you don't see them in your Healbot screen. It doesn't get confusing. You can just have 1 through 5 selected. So if we go to headers, I have that turned off, not necessary. For bars, this is just how I have mine set up. This is pretty much the one place that you're going to customize it the most as far as smooth, your height, your row spacers, your enabled opacity, your out of range, really not necessary with aggro bar size, your number of columns, width, column spacers, incoming heals, disabled, and bar size. What I will say, these are my things. Enabled opacity at 90%. So right now, like you can see, it's pretty dim. But if I were to take damage, it's going to light up pretty bright. So it's a fairly significant amount that you see the change. For out of range opacity, I have it set to 40%, so you can see in some of my videos you can tell that people are taking damage, but at the same time you can tell that they're out of range. So I don't waste global cooldowns hitting buttons mindlessly and them not be in my range. And then I can also call out for heals or try to get in their range and try to heal them. Number of columns I'll change based on whether I'm in a 10 or 25-man raid. So if I'm in a 10-man raid, I'm just going to have 1 column going down. If I'm in a 25, I'll just change it to 2 columns. So you can see in my videos, I just have the 2 columns going up and down there. Incoming heals opacity is something else that you may tweak. It's basically just saying when I click this, it's just going to light up 15%. For me, it's not a big deal. It's not an issue. I don't really care. So I just kind of like it very lightly dimmed. Disabled opacity is probably the thing that makes my Healbot a little bit different. I really enjoy the 7% a lot. That way it's not a whole bunch of green bars lit up all the time, which like I said would get really confusing. Having it at 7% really kind of gives you a really good visual of who's not taking damage, who is taking damage, who has aggro, and all that. So it's just, I think that that's 7%. It's something that you'd have to get used to, but you can see in the videos that it just makes it abundantly clear who needs heals, who doesn't need heals. Icons, I have show hot, so you can see my hot is all the way on the right of my bar. So you can see on bar on the right side. You can change the icon scale. This is something else that you can personalize. If you like it smaller, like you would see in Voodoo, for example, you can do that. I've just always had the 1. So it does get confusing for me when I have, 4 different HOTS on them, but that is something that I have to work with. I'll probably wind up changing my icon scale just because this harmony shows up and all that. But show debuff is something that I did only for Firelands, because regardless of if they have a magic curse, whatever, I'm going to be dispelling them. That's, it's my job. So I don't really care what the debuff is. I don't really care the duration of the debuff personally, but I did check this for specifically Belrock Torment so that I could see how many stacks of Torment they have and know how to time my heals, when to blow all my mana, and all that. So show ready check is just if you have a sister, you want to see who's ready. And I'm not even 100% sure what this does, so hey, I think it's checked automatically. This will also show anybody that's marked by somebody who has assist or the raid leader for, say, who's going up for Beth Telek. So you can just see on your Healbot. Also, it'll show, DBM warnings. So that's really nice to see. This will also show if a Death Knight pops Anti-Magic Shell, for example, Druid pops Bark Skin, if you have, anything like that. So you can kind of see when cooldowns are being popped. I find it pretty helpful because then I know that they expect damage or they're taking a larger amount of damage than they normally would, and maybe I wouldn't necessarily catch that right away. It's just kind of a really good eye catcher. It really draws you in there. Aggro, I'm pretty sure this is already like this, but you can double check with my page and see what do you think. This is just going to show a little flash. If somebody pulls aggro, their bar is going to slightly light up. That's just how it is. So I kind of like that. I can kind of tell that somebody may be taking damage. For chat, I just have Notify Raid for Resurrection only. So if I'm casting Battle Res while in combat or just a regular Res while out of combat, then they can see that I'm doing so and not double up on that. Bar text, you can color text by class if that's something that you want to do, so you can see my name turned orange for Druid. I just find that the more colors, the more stressful. You can also show the class on bar. You can barely see it, but there's a little Druid hand that's there. Obviously, I like the name on bar. And I have the double text lines just in case I need to see the health for some reason in a fight. Otherwise, you can uncheck that and the name will just go in the center. But that is something else you can do. You can do it as health. You can do it as a percentage. You can see how much percent of life somebody has. You don't necessarily need that for anything in Firelands. I mean, I could see using it in Chimeron, but not so much anymore. Text alignment, I have middle, and this is where you can change your font size and font as well. None for font outline. So then you can go to the icon text. I believe this is pretty standard here, so you don't have to worry about anything there. So if we go to Cure tab, this is pretty great. So this is where you'll put in your Remove Corruption or Dispel Magic or, whatever you have, and it's going to be on the raid. So this way, as soon as somebody... Now it's nice for druids, obviously, because you can remove magic, poison, and curse all with one click, so I don't need 3 different key bindings, but anybody who gets any sort of debuff that I can dispel, their bar is going to turn blue. That's just how it works for me. You can change that color to whatever you want. And you can see an example of that in my Ragnaros video, people getting hit by the lava waves, including me once. So you can see that, but you can change that to whatever color you want. By class, non-harmful, slow movement, short duration. That's just all the different debuffs. You can set this duration, so you're basically telling Healbot right now that I don't want to see any debuffs if they're 3 seconds or less. There's no point. By the time you get to them, by the time you dispel them, it's probably not going to be a big deal. Also, you want to set up custom on the raid, and I'll show you that in a moment. So custom is anything here. Healbot does a pretty good job at doing some things, burning cinders, ender flare, engulfing darkness. Some of this stuff I've never even really seen. But a lot of things you're going to have to put in by yourself, a new debuff. So for example, for Alyss Resort, I put in Gushing Wound. That way I knew when the tank had Gushing Wound and when I needed to let them go below 50%. So it's pretty clear. I did that for Squall Line as well. It's one of those two spellings for Alakir. So I knew right when somebody got into a tornado, I could call for a life grip, or I could just throw an extra hot or heal on them to try to keep them alive through that. So you'll just literally type in the name, Gushing Wound, and make sure that they're capitalized. It's all set in there, and then you would just hit save. You'll change the bar color. I have custom as bright pink just so I can clearly see, and it'll pretty much, shock my eyes into alerting me that something's going on. So that's that. Monitor to remove debuffs, also in combat. Warning, I'm pretty sure is pretty much how it is how it's supposed to be. You can play a sound if somebody gets one of these specific debuffs, if you'd like. That's something that you can play around with if that's what you enjoy. Buffs, I have Mark of the Wild on the raid, so if I don't have Mark of the Wild, my bar is going to be white. That's just the custom color that I chose. So if somebody ports to Stormwind, for example, gets ported back, they don't have their buff, I know right away who doesn't have their buffs, so no one needs to yell out that they're going to need Mark. They're already going to know automatically. I'm already going to know automatically. You can also monitor in combat, so if somebody gets battle res, you'll know that they need Mark of the Wild. I automatically pop it after rebirth, so I don't have that checked. Thorns I have on main tanks, so there are 2 people marked as main tanks, so before the pull there will be 2 blue bars, and I'll just put it on whichever tank is going to be misdirected to, whichever one's taking the boss first. For tips, I have all of these unchecked. I don't need to see target information or tool tips. This is just how these are there, and I never saw the need to take them off. Opacity 80%, again, not really anything there. And I'm pretty sure that this is already like this. The only thing that I'm not sure if Smart Cast out of combat is automatically checked, but specifically for, say, resurrection. So if somebody's dead and I go to click on their bar, mine is nourish for a left click, but if I click on their bar, it's not going to try to nourish them and say, that target is dead. It's just going to resurrect them. It's just how it's going to work. So I like that. So then spells is where you're going to do all your spell combinations. I just have a 3-button mouse, so that's what I use, and my alt is my my push to talk. So if I just have whatever spells, make sure you capitalize them, of course. Nourish, Swiftmend, Regrowth. These are just mine. Rejuve, Rebirth, Remove Corruption, and Life Bloom, Healing Touch, Innervate. So cast when pressed. That's my preference, and that's how I feel it should be. If I click, I want it to happen right away. This is where you can do your use trinkets. So for example, like your Fire Quintessence that you would use, if you had that equipped, for example, in slot 1, then you can select, say, I want it to work whenever it's up, whenever I'm using it. I would probably, put it on a whole bunch of different ones, like every single one I could. I would probably automatically trigger that, that trinket, just so whenever it's ready, it's going to be utilized. That way there's really no downtime. So that's good there. Another thing that you can do with this is you can tag macros to it, for example. So if you're an engineer and you have Spring Synopsis, you can make a macro to use your gloves, and you can tie it to a spell. So you could tie the macro to the spell, you can select it, and every time you cast Nourish and your Spring Synopsis was available, you could use that. So I believe that is pretty much it. So if you have any questions, of course, let me know, and you can see how it all looks put together in a raid situation in any of my videos. And if you have any questions, just shoot me a message or reply to the video. So thanks for watching.